All right, well, we're pretty much at 4 o'clock, so I will welcome everyone and call this meeting of the May 14th, 2025 of this special meeting of City Council to order. The mayor's asked me to fill in today as chair, so just so everyone is aware while he is here. We'll start with the adoption of the agenda. Actually, no, before we do that, I have to start by acknowledging, we're holding this meeting on the traditional territory of the Tla'amin Nation, who have stewarded this land for thousands of years. So now we will move on to the agenda, which I believe we have an adjustment. Mayor.
Council agenda.
Mayor will need, sorry, parliamentary privilege. Yeah, we'll need a microphone. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Yeah, it's to add 12.1, which is endorsement of Mayor Wasnow's FCM Board of Directors.
We'll need a second as we're on council right now.
I think we just move adoption of the agenda with the as amended.
That is correct. We can do that as well. So
Yeah, I would move adoption of the agenda as amended.
okay, moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by anyone? Second by the mayor. Okay, any other discussion? And seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Moved unanimously. Okay, so that takes us to our motion to go into closed. Councillor Elliott?
Thank you. I move that following the adjournment of this meeting, council move into a closed meeting to discuss matters covered by the community charter under sections 91A, personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the municipality or another position appointed by the municipality. D, the security of the property of the municipality. J, information that is prohibited or information that if it were presented in a document would be prohibited from disclosure under section 21 of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. And I, discussions with municipal officers and employees respecting municipal objectives, measures, and progress reports for the purposes of preparing an annual report under section 98 annual municipal report.
Second by the mayor. All in favor? Passed unanimously. And just before we step away, corporate officer, I know we're scheduled to reconvene at 5. Should the closed meeting go shorter? Are we going to start at 5 regardless for anyone who's online? Okay, just want to confirm. All right, we'll reconvene at 5 o'clock and head upstairs for our closed meeting.
We'll just have to make up some stuff to talk about.
Can I confirm whether we're on the same link? There is a second link in the calendar. You can give me a thumbs up, Jessica. I see you. Or you can send me a message.
It's not the same link, Councillor. We need to go to the closed link.
Okay, I will do that.
There you go. Stephen knows what it's about.
Are we ready to go, Greg? Staff are okay? Okay. Well, we are back and open for all the fans watching online. So we started at 4 o'clock, but I will acknowledge again that we are hosting this meeting on the traditional territory of the Tla'amin Nation, who have stewarded this land for thousands of years. We don't have anyone in the gallery today for our public input period. Mr. Tate, does there happen to be anyone online that wants to provide any input on legislative matters? No callers. So moving on to section 9.1, I will turn it over to Mr. Szabo, our auditor from BDO. Mr. Szabo, welcome back.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here. I am pleased to present the audit findings report in respect of our audit of the financial statements of the City of Powell River for its year ended December 31st, 2024. I believe the report was provided to you in a package last week or maybe the week before even. So I'm assuming that you've had a chance to read it. So I will not go through all the details, but I'll hit the high points. And if you have any questions along the way that you want answered right away, that's fine. I'll stop and respond to those. If not, I can respond to any questions at the end as well. So I will maybe share my screen here so that you know where I'm speaking to. Is my screen visible?
Not at the moment. Just clarification from staff. Was the report supposed to be in the agenda package?
Through the chair, it was emailed on Friday.
Go ahead, Mr. Szabo.
Okay. Just want to provide some comments on materiality. We set materiality levels to guide the audit and also to determine at the end of the process whether individual errors or accumulation of errors are material to the financial statements such that we would not be in a position to sign the auditor's report. So these are the materiality levels set. The $4.1 million is in respect of capital. The $1.39 million is in respect of operating at the group level, which would be the consolidated financial statements. And then the 1.251 materiality level is in respect of the individual organizations. So that would be the Community Forest Company and the city on a standalone basis. So those preliminary materiality numbers were reduced somewhat for the final materiality simply because the actual operating results differed slightly from what we anticipated based on budget in prior year. The status of the audit, we're substantially complete. The procedures, we have wrapped up all of our review processes and subject to council's approval of the financial statements and then receiving the signed management representation letter and then updating our subsequent events questions of management, we will be in a position to sign the auditor's report. The work was performed substantially in accordance with the planning report under the date of February 19th, 2025. The audit findings, we assess the risks at the outset of the audit each year. And there are a number of risks that are standard to all audits. These are two of them. Management override of internal controls, and this is not a commentary or specific to the city. It's just simply the fact that management is in a position, if they wanted to, that they could override the internal controls that are present in the city. And so we do address this risk by performing a number of procedures, primarily over journal entries that are executed throughout the year, but also addressing any significant estimates that are made and ensuring that there is no bias that is apparent from those estimates. So all these procedures were performed with no matters noted. The second risk on this page is the risk of fraudulent revenue recognition. This is more prevalent in private sector and public companies. The nature of the revenue streams of public sector organizations is typically that they are not susceptible to manipulation to the extent that it is possible in the private sector. Plus, there's very little motivation to do so and very little opportunity. So we rebut the risk of fraudulent revenue recognition. However, the revenue recognition standards are quite complex, and certain of the city's revenue streams are subject to some judgment. And so we do a fair amount of work, particularly around grant revenue, where it might be restricted, to ensure that the relevant activities are performed prior to recognizing that revenue. And all of the audit testing in this area was performed, and no matters were noted that suggested that there were any misstatements. Employee future benefit obligation. This is a risk because it is quite a complex accounting matter. It deals with estimates and assumptions that go into the future, and it's relating to cash payments or benefit payments that will be made in the future on account of services that have already been rendered. But because it is a complex area requiring judgment and estimates and assumptions, an actuary is employed to do this calculation, and we do interact with the actuary to ensure that the assumptions used are appropriate in the circumstances, that they're using information that we can verify through the city's records, and also that they are independent of the city as well, just as we are required to be. The next item is development cost charges. Again, this is an area where we do spend a bit of time because they are required to be recorded as revenue when the relevant activities or infrastructure are built. So we do a number of procedures around the receipt of development cost charges to ensure that they're recorded properly initially and that the work is performed prior to them being recognized as revenue. The final two items are new accounting standards that were adopted in the current year or effective in the current year. The first one deals with revenue recognition of all of the transactional revenue streams. In the past, there were no specific accounting rules around these streams. So these would be things like recreational revenue, parking revenue, that sort of thing, depending on the nature of the organization and the revenue streams that it does take in. And so we did review each of the revenue streams that had not been previously subject to an accounting standard with management and tested the areas to ensure that they were in accordance with the new standard. And all of the testing was performed with no issues noted. The last one there is implementation of the new accounting rules around public-private partnerships. The city has implemented this in the current year and did a thorough investigation of all contracts and agreements, and noted that there were no agreements that fell under the scoping of this new standard. So there was no change to the financial statements of the city resulting. I'll maybe pause there just to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions from council at the moment? Seeing none right now.
Okay, I'll carry on. The next page is a lot of information around the new revenue recognition accounting standard, and it's really just some a heads up to management and council that while the standard itself is not likely to change significantly, it does depend on the agreements that are in place and the method of collecting revenue and the nature of the revenue within the city. So as the operations of the city change, it's just an alert to management to be vigilant that those changes are reflected appropriately in accordance with the new standards. So we've discussed this fairly extensively with management as the standard was being implemented, and certainly understand that they have done an appropriate job currently, but just a heads up to maintain vigilance over the future. Internal control matters. We do not perform an audit of the internal controls, but we do test them to the extent that we rely on them in the course of the audit. If there were any significant weaknesses in internal control, we would be required to bring those to your attention, but there were no deficiencies that we consider to be significant weaknesses in the current year. There were no adjustments made as a result of our audit, and there are no unadjusted differences that remain uncorrected, and no disclosure omissions. And finally, there are a number of items that if these factors were present, we would be required to report specifically on them. The only item noted there is the use of the work of the actuary for the employee future benefits calculation. And as I indicated, we did our communications with them to ensure that we were satisfied with their work and their independence from the city. The following pages are some recommended resources. Each of these red boxes is a link to our website. There's a fair amount of quite interesting information, particularly in the public sector resources box here. So I do encourage you, if you've had a look at these web pages in the past, we do update them regularly. So there are changes that are made to them as the environment changes, and that we do keep them up to date on a regular basis. Again, a public sector landing page here that you can go to. And then the appendices, first appendix is the independent auditor's report. It's in draft form right now. It will be signed, as I indicated, subsequent to council's approval of the financial statements and obtaining the representation letter and updating our subsequent events procedures. The representation letter follows. This is a standard letter that we require in all of our audits. It's not specific to the city. It's just information that management has provided to us, and them confirming to us that they have provided us with all information that we require, and that they have provided financial statements that are in accordance with the proper accounting framework. And then finally, our confirmation to council that we are independent from the city as a firm in accordance with the Code of Conduct of the Chartered Professional Accountants of British Columbia, including the criteria that is listed there. In a public sector organization, it's normally work that we might do that is outside of the scope of the audit. That may be in conflict with our responsibilities as auditors. We don't do any such work, so we can confirm to you that we are independent. I'm happy to respond to any questions.
Thank you, Brian. Are there any questions from council? Justin, okay. Not even a fake question scratching the eyebrows. So I guess we are moving on from the question stage. Councillor Elliott, go ahead.
Move that council approve the City of Powell River's draft 2024 audited financial statements for the year ending December 31st, 2024.
Second by Councillor Doubt. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? That is, I'm going to assume Councillor Southcott's a yes as well. So that is unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Szabo. Do we have anything else from you?
That's all for me. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for your work. So anything from staff on this matter before we move on? Ms. Dennison.
Through the chair, if we are to reconvene in closed, I may need Mr. Szabo to attend that portion as well.
Okay.
Just have this to deal with.
Yeah. So yeah, Mr. Szabo, don't go too far. We didn't finish our closed meeting. So Okay, so, but nothing else on 9.1 or 2 then?
Through the chair, we can invite Mr. Youngman up to present the analysis on the financial statements briefly.
Mr. Youngman, go ahead.
Good evening. So the purpose of this report is to provide analysis of the city's draft 2024 audited financial statements. So the report goes into quite a bit of detail, so I'm just going to focus on the key points. But if there are any questions on the report, the presentation, or any aspect of the financial statement package, I'd be happy to answer them at the end of the presentation. So starting with some background information, the financial statements have been prepared by management in accordance with public sector accounting standards. And as we've heard from BDO, our external auditors, we've got a draft clean audit opinion, which we are pleased about. So the first statement I'd like to bring to your attention is the consolidated statement of financial position. So this is a balance sheet, which it provides a snapshot of the city's finances at a point in time, which is December 31st of 2024 as compared to the prior year. So I'd like to bring your attention to cash and cash equivalents, which increased by 16.8 million to 63.8 million, primarily due to the 2023 dividend from the Powell River Community Forest of 6.3 million that was deposited during the year, as well as collections of accounts receivable of 4.7 million, primarily due to the receipt of grant funds from the provincial government for the construction of the consolidated wastewater treatment plant. Dividends receivable from the Powell River Community Forest decreased by 2.5 million to 3.7 million. And the $3.7 million dividend receivable from the community forest in 2024 is significant. It's just in 2023 it was exceptionally large. The 2024 dividend receivable is consistent with the 2022 dividend. So liabilities were 56.8 million, which is fairly consistent with the prior year. And looking at the tangible capital assets, that increased by 6.9 million to 215.8 million, primarily due to the airport rehabilitation project. The next statement I'd like to bring to your attention is the consolidated statement of operations. So this is an income statement which provides a summary, a financial summary of the city's finances for the year ended December 31st of 2024. Taxation is the first item I'd like to bring to your attention, which came in pretty much as expected. The increase of 3.3 million to 27.8 million is primarily due to the $1.6 million transfer to the property tax stabilization reserve and an increase in transfers to capital reserves to fund the infrastructure funding deficit. Government transfers increased 2.8 million to 9.6 million due to increased grant revenue, recognized primarily from the airport rehabilitation project. There was a budget to actual variance of 8.7 million, primarily due to the grant funding not being approved for the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation's Housing Accelerator Fund and capital project delays. So overall, revenue came in at 56.5 million, which is fairly consistent with the prior year. Looking at expenses, general government services increased almost $1 million to 10.1 million, primarily due to an increase of 900,000 to 1.8 million in Powell River Community Forest grants to community organizations. And overall expenses came in at 45.3 million, which is fairly consistent with the prior year, resulting in an annual surplus of 11.2 million. Thank you. Are there any comments or questions?
I think we jumped the gun on our motion before you had a chance to present your audited statement. So we anticipated it was going to be so good that we voted in advance. So would anyone like to backtrack and ask some questions after we've already approved the audit? Councillor Elliott.
Yeah, I'd like to just, I noticed our actuals revenues were lower than the previous year and lower than what was budgeted. And I know you explained it, but it went really fast. What was that? The main shortage was in government transfers. Is that where that was at?
Through the chair, that is correct. Yes, there was a budget to actual variance of 8.7 million, which was primarily due to the grant funding not being approved for the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation's Housing Accelerator Fund and capital project delays. So yeah, it's the government transfers was the main reason for that.
Thank you.
No problem.
My question, if you go back, I think, to your previous one about the cash and assets, you mentioned the increase in cash and equivalents was due to, if I heard you correctly, community forest being over 6 million, and there was something else you mentioned that was over 4, but it only seemed to add up to 10 million difference, and I'm estimating a 16 million difference. So I'm just curious, maybe I just heard things wrong.
Yeah, I just kind of provided a high level summary there, but yeah, those were the primary reasons for the increase in cash. There was also the other assets held for sale, which increased the city's cash as well because of the fire truck that was held for sale at the end of 2023 and it was sold in 2024. So that was another contributing factor as well. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions for Mr. Youngman? No, okay. And we've already approved your audited statements, so I believe we're good to go on this topic then. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have our added item into 12.1, which I will read for the benefit of the crowd in front of us today. So this is the endorsement of Mayor Wasnow on FCM's board of directors, whereas the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, FCM, represents the interest of member municipalities on policy and program matters that fall within federal jurisdiction. Whereas FCM's board of directors is comprised of elected municipal officers from all regions and sizes of communities to form a broad base of support and provide FCM with the united voice required to carry the municipal message to the federal government. And where FCM's annual general meeting will be held in conjunction with the annual conference and trade show, May 29th to June 1st, 2025, followed by the election of FCM's board of directors. Be it resolved that Council of the City of Powell River endorse Mayor Ron Wasnow to stand for election on FCM's board of directors for the period starting in June 2025 until the end of Council's term in October 2026. And be it further resolved that Council assumes all costs associated with Mayor Ron Wasnow attending FCM's board of directors meetings.
There's a seconder to that. I will speak to it.
So yeah, you can second yourself, but Councillor Elliott's taking it. So go ahead, Mr. Wasnow.
Yeah. So I've been closely following the FCM for the last couple of years. And the one thing that I think could add significant benefit to Powell River, as well as other municipalities in Canada, is the proposal that a large portion of the current money that the federal government makes available through a long process of getting applications from municipalities across the country could be replaced, where $10 billion, for example, could be allocated to each municipality based on their population, and the municipality would assume the responsibility to utilize those funds in the best possible way for the community. The reason why I believe I could be a strong board member with regard to this particular project is that I spent 2 years on secondment to the federal government as the chief of staff for the environment minister. And it was a time in which there was a lot of environmental initiatives. And I was charged to get approval from 7 different ministries to allocate $119 million for the St. Lawrence cleanup. So this was a 2-year process. I had a lot of meetings with Treasury Board, with the ADM of Economic Development and ADMs in Environment, and dealt with 7 different ministries. So good understanding of what it would take to position this type of initiative, not only up here, but down below. And I've also, subsequently, I co-chaired a federal government and industry association group that spent 2 weeks in Europe and the UK. And again, it was an opportunity to work closely with finance and economic development and to get an understanding of what it takes And we always said in Ottawa that the bureaucracy has the brakes of a Rolls Royce and the engine of a lawnmower. So you really have to know how to navigate all through that. So that's my rationale for why I would like to run for the FCM board.
That's really it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Wasno. I think it would be great to have representation on the FCM board. A lot of it is really far away, and I'm just curious about, I think I support the idea, wondering how we ensure that that's covered in our budget, because it isn't at this point in time, and wondering if staff has ideas about that at all.
Through the chair, the budget has provisions for conferences. And so I would need to take a detailed look at what has been spent so far and what's remaining to be spent, and then if there's room for this conference. So this would be kind of a more of a detailed review to understand if there's provisions. A motion could be made that the budget be amended should more funds be required, up to an additional $5,000, for example. So a motion, you could have a contingent budget amendment, you know, in order to continue to make progress.
So, sorry, just to follow up, the conference I think is covered, and it's part of, that wasn't my concern. I was thinking, should you be successful and you be a board member, you'd have to go to board meetings, and that would be more frequent than just conferences. And so maybe we would need a small report that indicates how a budget that would go with that. And we don't have that yet, but I think we can do that later if you're successful.
I think 2 years ago when I attended the FCM conference, I briefly mulled over the idea of running for the board. I believe outside of the AGM conference, there's maybe 2 or 3 other meetings that might require in-person attendance, and the rest might be done by Zoom. But I guess maybe a quick answer for the CFO, based on 2024's numbers. I know we have a total travel budget, I think, of around 75,000 in that ballpark. I feel like last year we probably came under 60,000 in that total travel budget, if you're able to give a ballpark number.
Through the chair, I'd have to pull up the numbers. I apologize, I don't have them.
Fair enough, I'll put you on the
But
spot.
it would probably only take a couple minutes.
Okay, but from what I remember, at least attending FCM 2 years ago, and travel costs might have gone up in some cases, but I would ballpark a trip to the East Coast for 3 or 4 days might be from here around $4,000 to $5,000 range. And I'm pretty sure we haven't hit our travel budget in the last couple of years, so there's potential that we might be fine without a budget amendment, depending on requirements. But Mayor, you have something else to add?
Yeah, what I like to say is if there was a risk of going over my travel budget, or if there is a separate travel budget, I would be glad to incur any additional costs myself.
That's really generous.
Thank you. One question I have for you, Mr. Mayor. You mentioned consolidating. I do like your idea and your premise of having the municipalities take care of the funds themselves versus having to apply for applications. I imagine, are you referring to funds like the Green Municipal Fund, the Canadian Housing Infrastructure Fund? I think there's a Canada Community Building Fund off the top of my head. Are you thinking of some of those funds versus having to apply to just amalgamate them into, like, you have this much percentage and that's what you'd be trying to fight for?
Yeah, the concept that FCM brought forward is that any of the current programs where you have to apply for, and they would be working with the federal government to sort those out and pick the ones that would make the most sense and allocate those monies across the board.
That's a problem.
I'll just say through the chair that I applaud the mayor for taking this initiative. To the best of my knowledge, we have never had a board member to FCM from this jurisdiction for some time, if at all or ever. So I applaud the mayor for stepping forward and running for this position, which doesn't mean he's going to be on the board, but at least he's taking the initiative, and I support him in that endeavor. Thank you.
Councillor Dope.
First off, I'd like to thank the mayor for coming and talking to us at council before putting his name forward to run. It is the elected position, and that's a good thing. And I really like the suggestion that your major drive would be to a fair allocation of those federal government funds rather than the current lottery system where all the municipalities in the country apply, and through whatever decision process is being made, some municipalities are winners and get the money to do the projects that their community needs, and others don't win and don't get the money their communities need. So I think it's a positive idea and a positive concept, so I support the resolution. And if the travel expenses get beyond the current budget, we can always do a budget amendment. We've done those before.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. So I do support the motion. My recollection of the FCM that I went to when it was in Saskatchewan was that they're highly competitive processes, the elections, and asking Mayor, how is your French? Okay, brush up on your French and practice your speech before you attend, so that people will, in the French part, which there's quite a few municipalities there, will be inclined to vote for you. That's just my advice.
What I did when I was in Ottawa, I learned impeccably how to pronounce every French minister, assistant deputy minister, their names. And when I did that, they just assumed I spoke French, and so there was no problem. I had a translator along that would put me on side. So but I do appreciate your comment.
All right, seeing no further discussion, I'll call the motion. All in favor? And I'm going to assume Councillor Southcott's the same.
Aye.
All right, that passes unanimously. So moving on in our agenda here to public clarification. We don't have anyone in the gallery. Mr. Galinsky did confirm with me that he'd be online. So no questions from him though. Okay. So not seeing anyone in the gallery, we are going to adjourn our open meeting and reconvene our closed meeting in a few minutes. Thank you, everyone.
Looks like we're losing Constable.
Scott, so. He might be joining on the other line, and Councillor Elliott, Councillor Isaacson may be coming back.